this is obviously the fourth lecture in the series, and we've invited IOD, a group of, I don't know what to call them, web experts who operate maybe of the lectures we've been looking at so far with the furthest distance and immediate reference to architecture, I might assume. At the same time, I thought, since we've been sharing, I would argue, a kind of potential vocabulary with the organization of virtual space and ways of mapping it and seeing it, which we might start to discuss at the end of the lecture. I was very much intrigued to see these guys developing an experimental browser who is looking at the web and making it appear rather different, at the same time allowing another way of navigating it through it. And also what I realized is that some of the kind of intellectual ambient source material and philosophical concepts which are kind of circulating seem to be kind of crossing into our path. Anyway, I welcome Simon Pope, Colin Green and Matthew Fuller from IOD.
Thanks, Patrick. Give you a short introduction to IOD, who we are, what we do now and what we have done, and then we'll talk through the piece of software that we've made, the Web Stalker, put it in some context and see it together with some other more conventional browser softwares. The three of us are all fine art trained. We've been making interactive media of different kinds for the last 6 or 7 years together. This is the fourth edition of IOD. IOD stands for anything and nothing in particular. It was a name given to a project that initially was a collaborative work with musicians, writers and visual artists. It was a publication that was issued on floppy disk and through through electronic networks and other sorts of networks. It was of its time exploring different interface metaphors, non-standard interface metaphors. Issue 2 looked at again at interface and non-visual interaction, and again was a collaboration with some writers. With IOD 3, which came out 2.5 years ago, we made our first step into looking at system software, working with system software, and we made some software that was middleware, if you like. It sat inside, in between bits of the operating system and other applications. We've all felt the commercial pressures, being artists who work with interactive media, of the CD-ROM industry, the web industry, and have felt the pull towards being filling the blank in the browser window, producing graphics for the web. We thought we'd propose another type of practice. We decided to design and produce our own software. So a year ago, we started to produce IOD 4, the Web Stalker, amidst the browser wars that are just reaching some sort of conclusion this week. we saw the browser wars as some kind of phony war. There were two major corporations battling to define the web in one particular way. They were trying to make the web as a static medium. They were trying to fix HTML, denying some of the possibilities inherent in the markup language HTML and within the networks themselves. This was our first web project. We decided to make a tool which would help us explore the web, help us to inquire into the qualities of the web, without making too many assumptions about the kind of materials that we were dealing with. We wanted to look beneath the surface of the web page to find out what the web actually was. We built a piece of software that looks at basic HTML documents. It looks at the links from each HTML document. It then chases those links, finds other HTML documents, and continues that cycle. So this is a piece of software which deals with the web as a process. It banishes the kind of spatialization that you might get if it looks around any geographical metaphor. It reveals the web as a process that's contingent on your particular point of entry into the net. The software reports back on what it finds, and you can see on the screen that the software is drawing a map of the circles here representing HTML documents and links between them being drawn by the lines.
Okay, so on here what you've got is the first site is hitting to the top left corner is the IOB site at backspace. From there, what it does is take every link sequentially from that site and then pass through and keep running through every link possible, keep going in any direction that's possible to go until it gets a very dynamic local picture of the web. It basically investigates what's on the web rather than trying to produce a grid or correspond to a pre-existing map. It's something that is totally based on that particular moment, the connections that are there, rather than trying to present a kind of global view of the net. What each of these circles, which is the URL, can then have different functions applied to it. So you can take them apart in different ways and restructure the data for your own use in different ways. I don't want to go through and do a whole kind of how-to-use guide, but essentially that's something we're hoping to be able to do here. Like you download the software from the URL and stick it and try it out that way. So essentially, the kind of flavour of the software is very much more, rather than some of the, say if you go to some of the cyber geography type sites which try and produce very static get into things the wrong way. So I think one of the key kind of technical points of this compared to any other browser is that you get access to all the servers you've got URLs to at once. Okay, in a normal browser, under HTML4, you can only access one browser at a time. Basically, you have your route through the web is very much choreographed or determined for you. We wanted something that slipped through and got to many places at once. The reason why you're not allowed access to two servers at once is you can set up one server and another server and monitor the traffic between them as well as decrypting them at the same time. You can get used to things like credit card numbers and this kind of information. So if anyone wants to design a plugin for that, that's you're welcome. So what this does is it takes hierarchy, what's something that appears as a hierarchy, if you go between them.
If we look at a site that the British Telecom site that is sets itself up as a portal site into into the web, you can see the way it claims to be the primary way, the starting point to your exploration of the web. The Microsoft slogan, where do you want to go today, might give the user some idea that there is a mapped, plotted space waiting for them to traverse, that space is known, and that particular corporation knows everything about that particular space. With the web stalker, if we point that at the same site, you'll immediately break beyond the boundaries of the first website that you point the software at. So immediately there'll be a fluidity in the boundaries in the boundaries of websites. Okay, so immediately you get a view beyond the one HTML document that you've pointed the software at. If we click on one of these nodes, you can pull the URL out as text. When we were doing the research for this particular project, we were using Netscape and Explorer, and were aware that we were misusing the software, especially using slow dial-up accounts, so that we were finding ways of maybe rolling the cursor over anchor points in the HTML and reading the URL from the bottom of the browser window to try to guess where you were about to go, so that you didn't spend 20 minutes on your dial-up account reaching an HTML document that wasn't of any use to you.
So also in terms of the type of space you're seeing, as well as having a tree, hierarchical tree that's flattened, we're getting is something that, as well as being live and deeply kind of processual, is more to do with the potential representation of an infinite space. So something that kind of launches itself out into an infinity, but finds it in totally pragmatic terms, rather than something which just accepts what it's given.
Using this software, when we were testing it, we found that you can expose the hierarchies in the web. It's popular to think of the web as a rhizome with no one particular way up or down, or no hierarchy within it. But it's very easy to trace the way back up the chain to Pipex or UUNet.
So, for instance, if you look at most websites, like UK websites, you'll see that the majority, they're always referring back to Microsoft, to Netscape, or to companies making specific plugins. So you'll find, with repeated use, you find that in fact the web becomes very centralised in terms of not just tools for its use and construction, but also in terms of its organisation, in terms of link organisations. We see that the web still very much brings out a use of the web which sees the node and the link as being the key focuses. And this is very different in a sense to use of the web which see the key constructions within being gateways, portals, passwords, usernames, which is something more enclosed, something more related to logistics and the movements of commodities rather than circulation or flows of information. We wanted something that took the network as its prime operation rather than the movement of consumers around different opportunities to buy. So if you start analysing the net along the lines of looking for links, looking for nodes, as opposed to say, for computer hackers, for instance, the key element of any part of the network is always the password. Totally focused, all the attention is totally focused on finding a few strings of letters or numbers together in order to get access to almost another dimension. So what we wanted to do was to have this kind of action going on in a lot of different directions at once. Once you start analysing the net on this kind of this model of nodes and links, you start finding this, or you start interrogating or investigating it using this kind of model. You start finding this kind of these gateway systems, these gating operations, working in so many different directions, ranging from the ownership of domain names, or which is basically the things like bt.com or backspace.org/IOD, whatever. These structures, basically, the more power you have in the network, it seems like the shorter your URL is, or the greater, less your displacement down the domain node.
If we look at the way the map is, the way the web stalker draws the map, you can also pull out popularity of particular HTML documents. So you can start to, in effect, weigh a website, weigh its at least its pretension to popularity. The lighter circles are more popular. They link to we've had the map interpreted for us as being in 3 dimensions. It's actually strictly in 2 dimensions. We when we were making this software, we didn't want to impose too much upon the data that we were finding. We wanted to just pull out the things that we could find about the data. So hence you have represented only links between nodes. Those are the 2 things that we were sure are there. From that you can then build up. You can look at the frequency of links between nodes.
So I mean, as you can see, there's now a message from the BT site saying you're using a browser which does not support HTML frames. Obviously, this is a slight technical incompatibility here, which the rest of the web's going to have to be brought around to obeying.
Yeah, I was just going to say something about what Simon was saying about the network of nodes, and those nodes having varying amounts of power. That can even extend out, say, the electronic network to the first node. It's which browser do you choose? Choosing a browser that doesn't support frames, the website will tell you to go away and get one that does. And then you're already into the network of either Netscape or Explorer. So that's quite important.
So in terms of the mode of software production we're using, there's no kind of development path for the web storage. It's something that's thrown out as an investigative tool. It's not something that aims to conquer market territory.
It's the whole text of the HTML document. There are things that are on the web that are not. I mean, HTML documents are the basis of the web, but there are a lot of things on the web that that aren't accessible through HTML documents. Things like JavaScript and CGI scripts that run on servers. And there are a lot of things that are accessible from other browsers that are not actually part of the web, that form a different proprietary space, where one company owns the whole of the content within that space. And the WebStalker doesn't deal with any of that.
So I mean, essentially, it was just trying to open a crack within the. Because we saw within the 4 years from '94 to now, when the web was set up, there was such a very fast homogenisation of the technology and the aesthetics of the web. We wanted to just throw something out that took a very different approach. We saw that the majority of browsers, whether they be university developed ones such as Mosaic or Opera, or more commercial ones such as Netscape or Microsoft Explorer, very much took the conventions of graphic design. That is, basically they ported techniques of book production, magazine production, designed for paper, ported them to the web. So basically they were plastic gluing pages to the inside of the screen. This was something that was much more, the possibility of doing something that was much more in tune with the actual dynamics, or certain of the actual dynamics of networks, and something which is slightly more truer or made different uses of the network, which were more suited to the way we saw information moving. Largely because we didn't want to believe everything that was presented to us, and we wanted to look behind and underneath, try and find out the subtext to a lot of the information. Okay, I guess it's probably most useful for us if we have comments or questions that do.
Yeah, I'm playing with your software, and first of all, I think you can scratch the stuff here. Well, I don't know if you're developing it.
Sir?
Anybody you're developing it?
Yeah, but well,
Yeah.
a bit less.
I just wanted to ask you a couple of things to clarify certain things. Just by what was written in the original presentation record, that your browser stores network density, but you store network density not by a bandwidth, but you store it by hyperlink, i.e. administrative URL, and your browser would store possibly the parsing output for syntax, right?
Yeah.
So, and then when you run into that end, you have to have it protected for, or if that API script is connected or otherwise, then that's not possible.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to clarify that. So basically, it's almost, you were saying, a critique of the way that certain content is stored, the general request,
The-
would you say that nonetheless, or I mean, okay, obviously, it's done, and you're not blaming it, whatever, it's not important, it's really program. But would you say that nonetheless, a certain clear discrimination of information that contributes to that? What I mean is that the fact that some cases are in fact quite clear.
We see that basically each piece of software, and you can say, each piece of software produces a sensorium for seeing the world, produces a way of knowing, doing, and changing the world, not just data space, whatever you want to call it. And you can see this range in any kind of field of software, from image manipulation software to desktop publishing, medical imaging, and so on. So we wanted to, within what we saw as the most homogeneous, but also the most, at that time, the most kind of hyperbolically sensitive, in a sense, field of software, we just wanted to try something out. We're quite happy that a lot of the people who use this software use it in tandem with other browsers and so on. We don't see they have any more clarity than the web store. They just have different types of use and different effects within the web. I think this has other types of clarity. There's other types of software that have different forms of code.
Which is my next question. Have you ever thought of, I don't know if you have you ever thought of redeveloping this as a plugin or something like this? Or that somehow it could help somebody, I mean, put it this way, you said yourself, you know how the market share, so I form competition network with Microsoft requires to say that it will be done. Not especially with all the libraries, but
Yeah, sure.
you have it for browsing.
I think the way that would be more useful to do it, if we wanted to do that kind of thing, which would be basically committing several years of our lives to developing software, which is perhaps not what we want to do in that particular way. The more useful way of doing it would be to do it through open source systems, where basically you program the stuff, you would then distribute the code to anyone who wanted to work on it, and the copyright would be maintained in an open place, but no one could then copyright the work that everyone else has been doing, and it would just basically evolve on its own. The trouble with, because this was written in Lingo, which is the programming language mated to Macromedia Director, the problem with distributing this as open source is that the way you release software, standard software, it's a very non-standard way of producing software, is that people can then produce these things called projectors with Director, which is a way of closing, turning code into a black box. So what we'd effectively be doing is doing one release, which you then get like...
Like, open source is a really nice idea if you operate within a community that respects the ideals of open source code, and like the design community doesn't have a gift economy, it has a theft economy. Like, we're quite lucky now. This work is quite well known, but if we'd just distributed the source code to it within 2 weeks of it being released, you know, we would have never been heard of again. Somebody else would have taken all the good bits and made their own stuff with it. Because we're up, as working within the design industry, we're up against some pretty stiff competition.
There has been a lot of interest from the Linux community, though. Initially, they wanted us to release the source code or to rewrite it so it would run on Linux, and we've had a few people approach us who have volunteered to port this. We were looking at various ways of maybe funding a research student or something at one of the colleges in London for this to get released. On the point of making a plugin, there we found we can get distribution quite easily through various shareware archives, and we're distributed on CD-ROM. And so we estimate something in the range of 500,000 copies are being distributed just through official shareware catalogs. That's not including the web distribution that we've got. So I think we're finding enough people do know about it and are using it alongside their proprietary browser software. But there are some interesting examples, like the piece of software called Alexa that was doing the rounds maybe only 3 or 4 months ago, that was taking information from websites, from the use of HTML documents, and was a piece of software for accessing that additional information. And I believe that's now been incorporated into either Communicator or maybe Explorer, I'm not sure. So some people are obviously taking that route. I think it. Well, we had an experience recently where our connection to the internet, like 2 nodes up, was under threat. It was under financial and various other economic threat, and it was in danger of just disappearing. And that's the very graphically made us realise exactly what that hierarchy is. It's a very physical manifestation of the structure of the web. It was like we were experiencing people about to have their business closed down, or and the various satellite startup businesses around that node were going to face hardships. So, and those are the kind of hierarchies that can be exposed through this software. You start to realise there are very physical relationships to the domains that you see, the sites that you see, and where those how those sites are funded or where they're positioned.
Okay. I mean, if you were interested in looking at that kind of thing, bandwidth maps, volume maps of the internet, you can get static maps from a site called cybergeography.com, based in London somewhere. Worth having a look at for a range of different kind of aesthetic technical takes on network construction and network mapping. Most of them are very much take a very kind of specific model or a very specific take on the net in a slightly different way from the way we're using.
One of the other things that's happened over the last sort of year or so since we made this, there has been a boom in web mapping software. I think partly it's because the web's become more and more designed, more media heavy, and people need tools to deal with what, like web administrators need tools to deal with what their web designers have done, so that they can actually find their way around the site. But there are a lot of tools that map websites in a lot of very different ways, some 3-dimensional, some using hyperbolic projections. But certainly like parabolic. And sort of over the last year, there's been almost every flavour of web mapping, has appeared.
Most bits of software that do map websites that are for site management, you have to gather all the information, you have to know the extent, you have to put it into a particular format. Then you use whatever piece of software to interpret that data. With the Web Stalker, we tried to make something that didn't have to know the extents to the terrain on which it was working. So again, it was to abolish that idea of the web as a knowable or known space.
there's been.
Are you aware of the patterns you find?
Yeah, very much. I mean, usually using the web, the way that you navigate is at the mercy of somebody else's design decisions. There's been a manager or a designer has laid out how you're going to get through the site, what you have to go through to find. If you do look at a site to find particular information, what you have to go through to find that information. And it's always good to have a tool that allows you to see something in a different way, so that you don't have to follow that particular structure that's been imposed, because it might, either through design or through lack of it, might not be that easy to find your way through. And like search engines are probably the oldest tool for finding your way around, so that you can query by keywords. And there's some tools like site mapping tools. And there's a new search engine called Clever. I think it's clever.com, that uses it doesn't actually display any maps. It's still based on keyword searches, but it uses something like the crawler within the web stalker to weigh the links between sites and to find sites that are the most commonly linked to for whatever keywords you've entered. So, I mean, there are more. Maybe there's the convergence between those other tools as a way of navigating the web, in spite of what anybody else does.
Navigating as well as you can spot your own link universe with a degree of real oversight, where they want to follow mainstream tracks and pick one more time where everybody's sitting, or where you want to another track. I think it must be very useful tool. I think we all get more and more into that, not only for the travelers, but also in our own home pages, and stitching up and locating ourselves and in that semantic structure. So that might, yeah. So I think what is really fascinating is to have this panorama of systems of revelation, or where different aspects are more legible, more kind of brought to me as something that can engage with than others. And then we'll be interested to start understanding which specific purpose crystallizes in particular breakdown of the really almost the information, what the link structure appears to be. That's all, because it brings us into the realm of typology, maybe, rather than metric kind of university architecture. But then as you use that, it's always some kind of unusual geometry as well. And you have it very simple that in your case you have the logical transformations. But it seems that whatever window you call up, it will keep on building up its network into that window space. It's very smooshed.
Yeah.
It's very legible. Is the one which is in all directions equal. Maybe I don't know if the web is. There's still lots to discuss how you chose particular geometry, particular sequence. Was it going clockwise round, and then which one does it pick up first and go? Is it circle? Are you going one by one, or are you jumping? Can you randomization process in the way the map merges across? The space for the time factor is important to because it takes a few minutes, or it will form an information, I suspect, what it will keep ends up revealing, but the way it goes through it becomes always necessary to verify it was interesting. And one thing is to steer it, and switch gear of searching big issues.
In terms of effectively steering it, you can close one map and open up a new map. Basically, that's the only focusing model. But in terms of its procedure, what it does is just hit a site, take all the links from that, and then just continue doing that.
But it starts with which one first? Alphabetically, or?
as it encounters them in the document. It's as simple as that. But, yeah. But it can get more complicated because of things like some links don't work, or some links link to resources that are not available, or some links. Some links you hit the link once, and you hit it a second time, you get a different thing that has a different set of links to somewhere else. So the maps are not can go round in circles as well. It's a finite state machine for anybody that makes sense to.
Also, one of the other ones who look at this particular one, we say it opens up from a local point and the configuration is consistent from that point of entry. Is that a quality that the other maps share or less?
It depends which maps. Quite often, in psychogeography, basically you have pre-prepared maps which are then pretty much glued on top of the web. That's the major type.
Some of the software that some of these maps here do actually dynamically map the web as well, and they I had a quick look at the Astra Site Manager, and that actually relies on you as a user a lot more to decide how you want to display things. It doesn't try and it tries to show you in a clear, legible, understandable way.
Interesting, there's 383 on the perimeter of all clear orders of subsumption without crossing line.
Yeah.
This is obviously an abstraction which is not certainly not the way it appears to be your problem.
Too difficult.
No, I mean, I appreciate it. This is the big section. This is just possible.
There are two views as well.
And the other one seems to be breaking it down from a single center and lateral connection. But also what I find often in yours, not in this one, but in other, that you have only a circle, but that in that circle is kind of filling out.
Yeah.
So these circles in the one are also expanded. They all seem to be all connected amongst each other and create these kind of spheres or webs. And you have, seems to me, never quite deal with the complex and the simple.
Yeah,
But where that distinction lies, and the other one, the stash. It's like a stash.
Well, the stash is basically you can drag one of these into a stash and it becomes part of the stash. So it's just a way of saving your own list of bookmarks. You can save it as an HTML document and show it in a regular browser as well. The map is actually a plot. The map's actually a plot over time of because things are encountered in a particular order, like the first link in the document and so on and so forth. So things are plotted in order of time. They become a hub if they're encountered first, and then other things link to that. So they become naturally the hub of some group. The difference between a simple one and a complex one is the simple one only shows that first time something was linked, and a complex one shows every time it's been linked.
Sorry, in a sense, you are beginning with the stack to give you the trials beginning up with actually exactly help you build up your own semantic language there.
Yeah, I mean,
So it's almost like it would be plotted away as little HTML on the fly.
yeah, it can do it does that. Anyway, I'm
Got that part right.
yeah.
I think it's sort of actively helping that.
Yeah. Part of the stash was something we thought would be useful for ourselves, so we made it. Really, it's as simple as that, I think.
Any more questions?
It has a. It's just a. The kind of markup language, the markup language that a web browser interprets could be interpreted in X amount of different ways. Your browser interprets it in just one particular way. The main reason we made this particular project was just to show the other possibilities, the potential in HTML. That there were many voices in that markup language, and just because some web designers would like to make that markup a physical markup language doesn't mean you can't retain some of its qualities as a semantic markup language. So I'll admit it is a fairly rarefied, specialised piece of software to find out some very particular things about the qualities of the web. That maybe it finds out just some other things that you don't normally get to find out about it if you use a normal browser. Hopefully that it will reveal through use some qualities of its own that you may find useful. We do use it. We do use it if one example would be if you just wanted to gather if you're given a one point of entry into a website that needs a password, sometimes you can sort of shorten the URL beyond the where the password is, and maybe pitch the web stalker in at that particular point into that site, and then see if it can map from that and get behind the password. You can sort of pull out. You can start to use it in different ways like that. You can leave it on overnight, mapping a whole site just to see what's within the site. That is what I think one of the things that differentiates the development of the web as opposed to the kind of hypertext environments that, say, Ted Nelson or someone was developing. Was with the web, you don't. There's an intention behind the link, and you can state that someone has physically linked an HTML document to another HTML document, but there's no way of actually assigning a value, any sort of value to the link. There's no way of describing that, and that's one of the qualities of the web. It can obviously be described. There can obviously be some intention described in text that is tagged, that is that you would click on in a browser, but it's not actually one of the qualities that you can pull out of the World Wide Web as a network. Well, one of the projects we're hoping to work on next is to find some way of adapting very strict hierarchies, of maintaining the integrity of a hierarchy, but maybe morphing it in some way so that it can reflect some sort of intention, so that yes, so the intention can be recorded in some way, without actually changing the integrity of the data that is being referred to.
I think there's something you can sort of see from looking at this map that might be a bit of an answer. If you look at this circle here, that's quite a bright circle, and that you can take to mean that a lot of other pages actually link to that page. And if I click it tells you just up here, excuse me, it's top.htm, and that's the table of contents. So if you're looking for the contents page of this site, you could probably determine that it was going to be one of the bright circles within that, and using some sort of mechanism like that, actually weighing how many things link to a particular page, then you can assign, after the fact, you can assign a value to the links.
I think we understand this project from our particular experience of the design industry, of design for the web, and there was a drive to maybe if you mark something up as site, as a quote, you would put it into italics at a certain point size. I think we're first of all, we don't have the resources to build any new sort of standard and get involved with that. And I think like even certainly our experience of software, and I know our experience of architecture is we probably misuse it more than we use it in an intended way. And I think it's more fruitful for us to have this particular approach to an existing standard and existing structure and try to make it as malleable as possible, at least to. Yeah, sure. Yeah, that idea of a desire line is really important. I think so allowing a user to change the structure of in this case software over time. It's introducing that idea of time into the design. That can be maybe in the design process. Maybe it's in the way that you have user feedback. While you're actually in a period of production, and include that back in the design process, or whether you actually build something that is intelligent enough to change itself according to user input.
I think you've also got to be really careful about thinking of a metaphor and then thinking of something to apply it to, because cyberspace, if it is, I'm not quite sure what the word means, but you don't measure distance and position in cyberspace the same way that you would in the normal space that we inhabit. They're very different. You can find quantities that you can correspond to distance and position, but you can't measure them the same way as you would a desire line across a path, because it's a shorter journey. Yeah. But the space is measured in steps and bandwidth and download time, not in left, right, up and down. Yeah. But you do see things. How many things have you seen where there's a virtual city that if you want to get from one resource to another and it's at the other end of a road, you have to walk in virtual space for 5 minutes to find your way there? To go off and yeah, sure, fire away. No, it wasn't, no. Well, there might have been somebody. No, I just think it was anti-rum. No, absolutely not, no. Was it not anti-rum?
not sure they're the website with the sort of scrolling animations.
I've no idea. No, it wasn't us.
My friend told me that you design the interface for CDs, so it's totally throwback.
I never saw it. I mean, I don't know. Unless they meant somebody pinched it or something. They did, I don't know.
I was just going to ask you about first year like this. What sort of programs do you use
So it could read, let's say, an Excel
Just
page.
learn it. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know. I've just got a sort of like working knowledge about how to do it, but like, just learn it. Just get the. You can even get the specifications for it and just learn it. It's the easiest way. And the easiest way to make web pages is just like type it in. Dreamweaver's not bad, but you've got to know it. You've got to know HTML better to be able to use it, because you've got to know what it's actually doing. But it can make some things easy. I don't know. So we don't do. I mean, you look at the site and it's like this anyway. So don't.
Is that when you actually design
No, not really. It's interactive media. We write software basically, write applications, and stuff like I do. I mean, a lot of commercial multimedia work. Basically. Our other side is a company called Escape. No, we just stuck it in. So it's all a lot.
It's actually just down.
And how do you make contact? Here?
Have you guys remember this?
Might be able to do it with JavaScript. I don't know.
Just trying to think of a way.
You can maybe do it with Shockwave, but
Really quick and simple.
you could do it with Shockwave, but it's a bit of a pain to use. Then you can do it in Directive. You can do it in Java. You can do it in Java, and then it can what's on your site. You know what I mean? Like when it opened, it would read your site in and turn that into a map.
Thank you very much.
If you do it
Thanks.
where you have to map it every time you want to change a page, it's going to be like a pain to do it. If you write it in Java, so you can look at the site.
I mean, my site's not that complicated at all. I just use it possible for that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So you can link it in much more with the page and everything. If you do it like that. So I should just. Yeah, no problem. Do I need to do anything else before I shoot? Where's your man go? He's got to go around.
And you've got it to the course. Just got to look at it.
Um,
I think there's one more letter. Is it somewhere?
lecturing here.
We could take it here.
Yeah,
Yeah?
why not?
Just put the table.
Or you can put the table in there.
Yeah, the table is here.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to rest here? Right, you want to move this over? Yes, I'm coming. Okay. All right. That's down. Jerry, figure it out. You go down there. That's down here. And then here.
Hi, I'd like to welcome you all here tonight. We've got a very special guest. His name is Mustafa Chahabadin. He's well known in the United States and Beirut. He plays a mean saxophone.
Thank you. I would like to start this evening by saying I'm really glad to be here. And we'll really test if what you're saying still makes sense.
We don't need it. We will not need it tonight. Thank you. I'd also like to introduce Mustafa Chahabadin. Mustafa and I go a while back when we attended the AA together. We actually used to set the chairs up you're sitting on now. And he actually used to work with metal here. Like, see, it's in your eyes now. It's not. See. You could start with the first slide, please. It's not working.
Test. Can you hear me? Can you hear me back?
Okay,
Can you hear me in the back? Oh, great. Okay. Now I assume you all know about architecture. Is this a fair assumption?
That's the table. Okay, that's fine. Where do you want it? There? In the hall or? This time where it is? No, this is not different. It's not one different. The title. Well, that's all right. We can just-
Yeah, this is nothing anyway. And this one is connected to what? This is what my
Yeah, we want to get that's all right. You put that on these two ways. In and out.
Then we put them on that side alone.
Yeah, we'll see.
Double just bring everything. This go there. Which connected to this as well?
Yeah. Well, look, it's just connected here. If we just
Yeah.
this one. Is what you would call.
is connected as well on there. One on it's full of cable as well. Okay, so we won't move it. Voilà.
Okay, there you go. Just stay like that. You have to move, you have to move. I was happy when you said that the machine is on. The screen comes down on the screen. No, what is it? Well, she didn't seem to come down. But you know, it's not the No, there is a very big problem of you have to be in charge of the only company. So the fact is that I can't get an answer from anybody. That's right. Two.